Welcome to this week's edition of Faith and Sustainability. I am your co-host, Rob McDowell, and I am here with my co-host, Kat Doyle.
Thanks, Rob. Before we get started, once again, always like to remind people that this particular podcast is about the intersection of hearing the story of people's faith journeys and how they intersect around their work of sustainability. We do want to recognize our longtime sponsors. A thank you to Archbishop Hartmeyer, to the Varlamov Family Foundation, to Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, and to Jamie Lanier.
All right. Our guest today is Gordon Rogers, who is the Flint Riverkeeper. I've had the pleasure of knowing Gordon for 20 years. Met him when he was the Satilla Riverkeeper. So now he's changed river basins. He lives in the Flint River Basin in Middle Georgia, Taylor County. Gordon, tell us about yourself and tell us about the work that you do with the Flint Riverkeeper.
Oh, goodness. And it says the Catholic Archdiocese of Atlanta. So I'm not going to do a confession. I don't actually do that except in extreme private. So telling you about myself, there's going to be certain lines that I don't cross. But I'm a Georgia boy. My father was a Methodist minister. He's still alive, retired. He'll be 92 next month. Methodist, of course, is Catholic ultralight, with Episcopals being Catholic light, and that's our heritage. It goes, Catholic, Anglican, Methodist, and of course the Wesley brothers did not intend to start a new denomination, but they nevertheless did, and so I was brought up in a Methodist home. I realize now that my Christian education was quite robust. I'm realizing that more and more as we run into interpretations of Christianity that are, shall we say, not correct. So that's my faith background. I'm a river rat. I grew up hunting and fishing, and that was many people in my family were mentors to me in that regard. Was educated at Little Emory, they call it, Oxford College, and later at UGA, Skidaway Institution of Oceanography, or Skidaway Institute of Oceanography, and then 10 years with Georgia DNR at their Marine unit in Brunswick. And then 9 years in the waste and recycling business in Brunswick, my wife, Gina, and I. And then I got into riverkeeping about 2004, and I've been that ever since. In terms of what riverkeepers do, I like to say that it's Civics 101. After we identify the issue with the river, whether it's a flow issue, an access issue, a pollution issue, like whatever the issue is, we bring to bear the correct branch of the three branches of government that suits the particular situation, and a free press. Notice I did not say an accurate press. I said a free press. To bring attention to the topic and try to bring, healing and a remedy to the situation. So that's what riverkeepers do.
You have given us so much to talk about in just that short introduction. I, too, am the daughter of a Methodist minister and grew up Methodist and made a conversion a few years ago, about 40 years ago almost, to Catholicism. But I, too, enjoyed a robust Christian education. So thank you for talking about that. I'd like you to maybe share with our listeners a little bit about if there was an epiphany or an aha moment when your faith and the work you were doing with the environment met.
Yes. And I'll precede that by saying that there was a moment when I had an epiphany about how powerful the Creator is, period, in our daily lives. So I had an epiphany on that topic, and in a very deep emotional way as an adult in my 40s. I already had faith, but my faith was deepened at a moment in my adult life when I realized how powerful the Lord actually is, period, in our lives. I'm not a Calvinist. I don't believe in predestination per se, but I do firmly believe that the Lord is active on a daily basis in each of our lives to the degree that we allow it. In it, that's my rubric, and so my mind was already open to the notion of this intersectionality, because my mind was open to the notion of any intersectionality on any topic, not just conservation and sustainability. And so there was a moment when I was running some charters, some saltwater commercial fishing charters in St. Simons, and I had a half-day charter. I got home, took a shower, sat down in my easy chair, and was intending to take a nap. This is about 2:00 in the afternoon because I've been up since 4 in the morning. And so I picked up a newsletter from a conservation organization that I won't name. And my intent was to be bored to death and to have that put me to sleep. Well, I read all the way to the end of that newsletter, and there was an announcement in it that Satilla Riverkeeper had just been organized, and they were looking for an ED and a riverkeeper. And so I picked up the phone and called the guy that had published the newsletter, and we had a good conversation. And that led to me being Satilla Riverkeeper. In that same exact month, my mother sent me an article about my grandfather, Rogers. I'm his namesake, or however that goes. Maybe he's mine. I don't know. I'm named after him. And there was an article in the newsletter of the National Parks Foundation, and he had given a very large gift to the National Parks Foundation and cited my influence on his thinking about conservation as the reason for the gift, which of course tore at my heart and made me, begin to cry, to think that I had some influence on him, because he was a huge influence on me, along with my dad and mom. And my mom wanted me to know about that. And so all of this happened within 30 days of each other. And that's when I knew I was on the correct path in terms of working on sustainability and my faith journey.
You both, be as Satilla Riverkeeper and as the Flint Riverkeeper, you work with and are in close contact with a lot of people of traditional faith in South Georgia, rural Georgia. Do you ever discuss your faith and your work in conservation with your stakeholders?
Oh, quite frequently. I would say that people of faith, be they urban, suburban, or rural, but it's particularly evident in rural folk, view conservation as a stewardship issue, like period, end of story. And that is true regardless of how old they think the earth is, or how they view man's influence on the climate, or any of those other hot button sort of issues that are associated with the natural world. So you don't have to get into conversations about deep time, geologic time, evolution, climate change in order to have this like-mindedness about the importance of taking care of creation. And I should add that what's anathema to me and to many folks that are dedicated to stewardship, at least in part based on faith, is the notion of real soon end times. Because I believe that all of this business about they're upon us, et cetera, And the logic, I'm putting that in air quotes, that flows from that about go ahead and use it up, because it doesn't matter if you conserve it or not. I mean, the end times are right around the corner, and the good Lord gave it to us to dominate, and the good Lord gave it to us to use for our own benefit. I believe that those are heretical teachings derived from the scriptures. I don't think that those sorts of philosophical or theological interpretations are correct.
So that's interesting that you bring that up, because we talk with a lot of different guests that come from a lot of different viewpoints. And one of the things I think almost every one of our guests has agreed on is this stewardship of the environment. No matter what else they agree or don't agree on, they do tend to agree on the fact that we're called to stewardship, no matter what their faith tradition is. I would like to maybe twist this a little bit and ask you, in your education and in those years as you were acquiring this wisdom and knowledge about the environment, talk to us a little bit about what your definition of stewardship of the environment means, and what are we all called to actually do?
I will freely admit that my interpretation of the answers to those questions has changed over time. When I was working for DNR, I was asked at some point by a reporter or a journalist of some sort. I don't remember exactly who it was. What Georgia DNR's mission was. And Rob, you'll laugh when I say this, and you'll realize why I only lasted 10 years and not 30 at DNR. My answer was, we're in the business of chronicling the end of creation. That is what we're in the business of doing. Not that I thought end times were upon us, but I thought that, a total train wreck of the environment was upon us. And, the environmental situation has actually gotten worse in many ways since I gave that answer. But my cynicism is not as deep. It might be as wide as it was, but my cynicism is not as deep as it was when I was in my late 20s. And I gave that answer because I just saw destruction all around me. I saw it continuing. And in terms of some sort of hope, and I don't use hope as a guesswork sort of word, I use it the same way that the scripture uses it. It's a real tangible thing. Hope is. My hope for the future has increased vastly since the day I gave that answer, because a lot of what I do on a daily basis, you can see the results. Now, sometimes it takes years to see the result, the positive result from it. But I have a great team at Flint Riverkeeper, and there are a lot of other effective groups, not just riverkeepers in the world, that are producing positive results for the environment. That may mean that the climate, 100 years from now is still a train wreck, but a lot of the things that we're doing on these rivers and in other places are building resilience for communities into the ecosystem so that the economic and social train wreck is not as bad as it could have been. And so what should we be doing? We should be putting one foot in front of the other and solving problems as we see them, and not letting, and then this is just my theological opinion, the dark forces in this universe influence us to be, to throw our hands up and just give up. I'm not going to do that personally, and I don't think anybody else should.
You and I both were educated as scientists. We're both men of faith, so we kind of straddle that world between science and faith, and that can for some reason that always generates some conflict. The faith views of people in the upper Flint River Basin around Atlanta are probably significantly different from those in the southern part of the basin. How did you or did you ever have a conflict reconciling science and faith? And if so, how did you navigate it?
I did, and it happened to me in grad school. And I distinctly remember diving back into the scriptures in order to, because I was in the scientific literature. I mean, the science that I was studying, I was very deep in it, and so I made a point of diving into the scriptures on a daily basis also. Not that I was some goody two-shoes. That's the part that I'm not going to talk about. But I was making what I considered to be an academic study of the scriptures at that point, asking a lot of questions, talking to a lot of people. And I decided several things, and I'm not going to be able to touch on nearly all of them. One is that faith in something supernatural should not be confused with knowledge of something that's natural. Number one, you can't prove a lot of things that are in the scriptures. There's a lot of things you can prove. There's a lot of historical facts in the scriptures that historians have confirmed, but there's also a lot in the scriptures that has nothing to do with facts. It has to do with faith and hope and love and these things that we feel and do as a result of our relationship with God. And that should never be confused with natural facts. And I think a lot of people of faith actually try to submit actual science to theological analysis and actual theology to scientific analysis. And that's a big mistake. The two things are related to one another, but they're very separate from one another. I had a neighbor of mine one time, very much a Christian fundamentalist, tell me that if I spent as much time studying the scriptures as I did studying the things that I do study, that I would have a much clearer understanding of the Lord. And of course, my little South Georgia redneck fight or flight kind of fired off in me. And my answer was, and I was not gentle, my answer was, how the hell do you know what I'm reading every night? Have you been in my bedroom recently? Do you know what's on my bedside table that I'm reading right now? And he was just kind of deer in the headlights. He and I gave him a hug and like, dude, you have no idea what's going through my head or what I'm reading on a daily basis. And I don't know how responsive that is to what you just said, Rob, but that's what it made me think of.
I love the answer. I do, when you're talking about all this, and we have all of these people of different faith traditions that listen to the podcast, I'm wondering, as they embrace this call to stewardship, what does that look like in terms of volunteering with the Riverkeepers?
The oath that we take when we join the Methodist Church, this is the only one I know.
That works.
Is that we vow to support it with our prayers, our presence, our gifts, and our service. That's the oath. That's the vow we took when we joined the church. And each of us has different abilities, and each of us has different pocketbook sizes, and each of us has a different sort of prayer life and the ability. I can't always be at church every Sunday. I've got other places to be sometimes. I think that in terms of volunteerism, that's the service part. That you do what you can and you do what you're qualified for. I mean, if you're an accountant, go do some volunteer bookkeeping or accounting work and save a Riverkeeper group or some other environmental group the time and the money by giving them good professional services. If you're an attorney, maybe do some pro bono work with them or for them, or even be in-house counsel if you're retired, at some point. If you are a mechanic, ask them if they have any vehicles or if you're a welder, ask them if they have any welding they need doing, like whatever. And then, of course, show up for cleanups, riverside cleanups, and, other things that need doing. We're having a big music festival this weekend. We've got volunteers that are taking tickets at the gate. We've got volunteers that are serving alcohol at the bar. We've got volunteers that are doing the meal for the VIPs. There's all kinds of things you can do.
Gordon, I just wanted to put a plug in for the Flint Riverkeeper, that if anybody is interested in getting more involved with the Riverkeeper and finding out more about it, it is just www.flintriverkeeper, one word, that's FLINT, riverkeeper.org. So, as you know, I've had a long professional association with the Flint River. It's become a personal association with the Flint, and I'm so happy that we have somebody like you with your very diverse scientific, faith, business, governmental experience as the Flint Riverkeeper.
We do want to thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
It is amazing how fast time flies in these conversations we have, and we are out of time, but I do always like to give you the last word. If there's anything you would like our listeners to know about you or your work, this is your chance for that final plug.
I would like to say get out and enjoy nature, because that'll be part of what helps you keep connected to the Creator and His creation, and then that will in turn inform how you can be of service.
I heartily agree, and I would have responded to your neighbor in that exact way. So thank you so much, Gordon Rogers, Flint Riverkeeper, for joining us today at the intersection of faith and sustainability.
We'll see you next time.